Hey, good morning, Bio20s. We today are going to talk about digestion. And we talked the other day about nutrients and macromolecules. Now we're going to talk about the different organs in the digestive system and what it is that they do so that you can get a burger and that burger becomes nutrients for your cells. So the four main functions of the digestive system: you ingest, you take food in, that's chewing and eating and whatnot. You digest. Now there's two types of digestion. There's physical and chemical digestion. And then those small molecules, you break down the macromolecules into small building blocks, have to be absorbed into the bloodstream and delivered to your body's cells so they can use them like glucose for cell respiration. Then you have to get rid of the things you couldn't digest. So that's pooping, right? Like eliminating or egesting, getting rid of those waste materials that you just couldn't use. So these two major types of digestion: physical is like, again, you're biting things, you're breaking them down, you are making the food molecules so that they're small enough so that the enzymes can work on them. Okay, so this whole unit, we're going to be coming back to the concept of surface area. And when you break your food down, there's now a larger surface area so that the enzymes, the chemical digestion can occur. And so the macromolecules, the polymers, get broken down into their building blocks, the monomers. So like a protein will be broken into polypeptides, and then the polypeptides are broken down into amino acids. So you might even see some old school names for the digestive system, the GI or gastrointestinal. Every time you see the word gastro, that means stomach. And intestinal, obviously, that's your intestines. And even older name is the alimentary canal, right? It's this tube that just goes through your entire body. Okay, so just shows these different processes. And here we go with the mouth. That's where digestion begins. The first enzyme that we talk about is from your salivary glands. And your saliva isn't just like spit. There's actually enzymes in there. And the enzyme is called salivary amylase. And it is going to break down starch, which is a carbohydrate, into its simple sugar called maltose. So not only is there the physical digestion of your teeth and chewing and swallowing using your tongue, making a ball of food called a bolus, but you also have chemical digestion. And again, the first time we see any macromolecule digested is right here in the mouth. And from the salivary glands, saliva, this is amylase, and this is the enzyme that is going to break carbs down. So once you swallow your food, the food goes into your pharynx, the kind of area that we call our throat. And then some of you, you've got that little hangy thing at the back of your mouth. And this is often the joke of like page 1 on your medical exam. And this little hangy thing here is called the uvula. And its job is to just, when you swallow, it flips up so that food, peas and carrots, don't get up into your nose. So anyways, once your food gets down and you swallow it and it goes into your esophagus, it is a muscular tube that is only having physical digestion, and it's propelling, it's pushing against gravity, right? The food towards the stomach. So here's your little bolus, the little ball of food that you just digested. And this muscular tube is just basically going to undergo contractions, which is called peristalsis, these rhythmic wave-like muscle contractions to push the food from your mouth, your pharynx, your throat into your stomach. And so there's no chemical digestion occurring here. There's no enzymes. We're not breaking this down into smaller pieces. All we're doing is just moving the ball of food from one area to the next. Now, you might have heard of heartburn, right? People get heartburn. This is kind of a fairly common condition. You might have even had it, that kind of pain in your center of your chest. And people who get this a lot, it's a chronic, it's a long-term condition for them, and they call it gastroesophageal reflux disorder, or GERD. And so they might have to go on medications and stuff, because what happens is the acid from your stomach gets up into the esophagus, and that's what's causing that burning pain, right? That acid it's fine in the stomach. Your stomach has a lining and a whole bunch of things to prevent it from being hurt by that, but your esophagus doesn't. And so having that acid get up into the esophagus, it causes pain. Okay, so we're moving on down now into the stomach. And there's a major misconception about the stomach. A lot of people think most digestion happens in the stomach. That is not true. In fact, the only macromolecule, the only major nutrient that gets digested in the stomach is proteins. So the enzyme called pepsin is the one that breaks down proteins into smaller little bits of proteins, which we call peptides or polypeptides. So most digestion actually is occurring in the small intestine, not the stomach. The stomach itself is kind of a J-shaped organ. You can see it's kind of like a J like this, and it's a very muscular organ. It's only probably about as big as a sausage, but it can expand and get as big as like a 2 or 4 liter size. So like this size of a jug of milk. And mostly the stomach stores food. And remember that it acts as the first line of defense, right? And we talked about this in our circulation and immunity, in that the acid is going to kill any bacteria that get into your body. So we have some little sphincters, and these are little bands of muscles, almost like a drawstring. So remember, here is your esophagus. The food is being moved along. And again, this is where the acid can get up from the stomach into the esophagus and wear away the walls of that esophagus. And that's what causes heartburn. But this really strong muscular organ is going to undergo both physical and chemical digestion. And so, yes, there's peristalsis, but there's also something special to the stomach called churning. And so churning is this motion, this mixing. It's almost like blenderizing the food that reaches your stomach. And so you produce this kind of soupy mixture. Chyme rhymes with time, and it will get released into the small intestine through this little sphincter down here at the bottom, the pyloric sphincter, and that's controlling how fast food goes into the small intestine. Of course, you know that there's a fair amount of chemical digestion going on here as well. We know that the stomach is special. Like, it's the only organ in our body that is extremely acidic, and it has hydrochloric acid, HCl, for you chem people out there. And because of this acid, it makes it a very, very low pH, like between 1 and 3. So this is going to be too acidic for most enzymes to survive in. But pepsin is the one that it loves this pH, and it digests proteins into smaller polypeptides. So a lot of kids wonder, like, why doesn't the stomach digest itself? Well, for one thing, you don't add gastric juice or stomach juice until food is actually present in your stomach. And so you don't have all this extra acid sitting around just digesting your stomach. Plus, you have a mucus lining that regenerates every couple of days, and that acts as a barrier to the acid. And you also are going to send out these enzymes in an inactive form. And then once the food arrives and the acid arrives, they become activated, and then they do their job. Okay, so again, stomach, very acidic. Muscular layer undergoes physical and chemical digestion, and proteins are the main things that are going to be dissolved in here. Not a lot of absorption happening, mainly water, salt, aspirin, but to be honest, it's more for just physical digestion. Okay, next page coming up, we have label the man here to do. And so you've got A, B, C, D, all these labels. You can write what they are and then match to the different functions. You also have this digestive system quiz handout you got. It's not a quiz. It is not a formative or summative. It's just practice. You just need to memorize. You need to, if you want, you can draw it out. Draw out your small intestine and large intestine, and what does your digestive system look like? And you have to be able to know all the functions. So here's this digestive system quiz I'm talking about. Like I said, this is not a quiz. You're not handing it in for marks. It's just practice. So label, what is the organ, what is its function, its job, the thing that it does, its role. So you will have to complete that as part of your practice for this part of the unit. Okay, let's get down to business here. Where is most of our digestion occurring? Well, that's the small intestine. The small intestine is the majority of the digestion and also absorption of our macromolecules. So, you know what? People wonder, why is it called small? When you read about it, it's like 5 or 7 meters long. That's very long. Well, it's small intestine because it's small diameter, and we're talking about just how big around it is, and it's only about 2.5 centimeters diameter, as opposed to the large intestine, which is way bigger. It's like 8.5 centimeters. Those aren't the actual numbers. The actual sizes, I mean, but just you get the idea that the small intestine is a lot smaller in terms of diameter. The one that we talk about the most, the first part of the small intestine, is the duodenum. And this is where most chemical digestion is occurring. There's a bunch of secretions, enzymes, and stuff coming from the liver and the pancreas. And this little chart shows here that we're having chemical digestion of all molecules, proteins, carbs, fats, everything is being digested in the small intestine. So some secretions, juices, we'll say, from the pancreas, some from the intestines themselves. And so these are the different enzymes, and this is what's being broken down in the small intestine. That is our chemical digestion. There's also a significant amount of physical digestion that is occurring here in the small intestine as well. And when we talk about physical digestion, we talk about segmentation and peristalsis. So segmentation essentially is the muscle kind of contracts and it forms almost just like a little package like this, and then the food that's inside it gets kind of sloshed back and forth, and that physical mixing is going to be able to kind of break down. And again, we're just preparing the macromolecules to be digested by enzymes. And then peristalsis, of course, we know is that muscular contraction, that the bolus, the ball of food, it's now chyme, it's more kind of liquidy, is there's contractions that are moving it along down and passing it through the length of the small intestine. So I'm going to finish this video here, and then I'm going to do a second little video for you, and we'll talk about the enzymes of digestion, what's going on here in the small intestine. We'll talk about surface area. We'll talk about the large intestine, waste formation, and also the accessory organs. Okay, so here's video 1. I'll catch you later. I'm going to make a second video, and we'll talk to you in just a bit.